We are readers, all of us. It is our greatest ally against the darkness that surrounds us, but it is our weakness too. It was 10 a.m., and I was traveling light when I found the book. Only a wash bag, a basic travel kit, passport, charger, and a couple of changes of clothes. I wouldn't be in San Francisco long, and I could carry everything I needed over my shoulder. I'd book into a hotel after my meeting. I found the book in an alleyway between a Chinese pool hall and a dilapidated mid-century apartment block. The book was bound in fine grain leather, once a smooth cream color, but now stained by unknown liquids and a fire. It was lying among trash, but felt too curious to ignore. I picked it up and decided to skip my meeting, which had a moment ago seemed so important, and went into the pool hall to begin reading instead. Inside, it smelt like chalk dust and beer. 5 Chinese men were talking loudly, and a television showed a singing woman in a sequin dress. A tired-looking white man in a checked shirt and a raccoon tail hat was playing pool against himself, but the other tables were empty. I sat on a frail aluminium bar stool at the side of the room and put the book on the slim beer shelf. The shelf creaked, as if the book were heavier than it had felt in my hands. One of the men had broken off from the group and came over to me. He smelt like a herbal cologne I didn't recognize and asked if I wanted a drink. I ordered a beer without making eye contact. I always tried to look at people when I talked to them. I never drank during the day, and I never blew off meetings, but there I was. He didn't seem happy with me, but grunted assent and went to get my beer. My eyes were locked on the book, and my fingers ran over the cover. It was plain, but beneath my fingertips it felt like there was an embossed pattern. I traced it with my fingertips, finding a circle with a web of geometric lines inside it. Holding the book up to the light, I still couldn't see the pattern at all, and an electric shiver ran through me. The guy came back with my beer, Tsingtao in a lukewarm bottle, no glass and no coaster. I grabbed a handful of cash from my pocket and gave it all to him. He walked away, counting it out. I opened the book. The edges of the pages were blackened from the fire that had marked the outside, but the sheets themselves appeared clean and only slightly yellowed with age. At first, I couldn't make out any words, only random lines scattered and scratched on the paper. I felt a strange delight spark inside me. Something had compelled me to read it. I must read it, but I couldn't do it. Thoughts of my meeting came back to me, and I went to pick up my travel bag and leave. But just as I was about to turn my eyes away from the pages, I noticed a word form from the lines where there had been no words before. The room became silent, and I had a sense that I was no longer inside, but instead I was standing on a vast and dimly lit plain. All around me I could feel the eyes of an invisible intelligence observing me. The plain was dry, cracked mud, but the light from the sky on the ground was a deep blue, as if from the sun of a distant, dying world, and not our own at all. The plain was empty, and yet I knew that I was not alone. At first I thought the plain stretched away infinitely, a dead, flat world, and then it seemed like my perspective changed. Enormous, sharp mountains seemed to form from the dust, as if I were watching aeons rewind, and then I saw a distant city grow from the mud. As I looked, it seemed to be nearer than before, and I began to see it in full detail. The city's streets were narrow and bare of the usual signs of humanity. Webs of lace hung between the buildings, as if a giant spider with infinite patience had nested there for millennia. The buildings were smooth and windowless. Many had fallen and blocked the unlit streets. I felt that the long-gone dwellers did not use light to see, because there were no markings of any kind that my senses could make out. There were no people, no cars, just the smooth walls and fallen masonry. And in the shadows, I once again felt the unseen mind watching. But now it was closer. My vision was moving through the buildings, passing through the city as if flying, being pulled onwards towards the center of the city. I felt a vibration, a single beat, as if a vast heart built in a way unlike our own. And soon I could hear it growing louder as I was dragged onwards. A vast drum was banging, resounding through the buildings and into my spirit. I could barely feel my distant body in the bar. Sweat was making my skin slick, and I knew my limbs were trembling. My breath was fast, and I was gripped by a terrible dread that was infinitely deeper than simple mortal fear. I knew my eyes were racing over the pages, my body possessed by the book, forced to read the words describing the alien city. And yet, I was also there, in that undead city that was haunted by something terrible at its center. I tried to pull my eyes from the pages. I tried to close the book, but my eyes kept on reading, and my hands turned the pages that described the streets in a language that I felt certain I had never seen before, and yet completely understood. The center of the city was approaching, and a spasm of fear unbalanced me from the stool. I fell, falling like a puppet with its strings cut, released from the terrible spell in the words. Words are powerful. We use them to record the things that we do not want to forget, but when we see them, we cannot help but read them. It's automatic for us. I lay limp on the floor, my eyes shut, feeling my breathing slow. I heard the men in the room standing around me, and vaguely registered that I could understand their Chinese. I opened my eyes and saw the fear and concern in their faces. They were kind, human faces looking down at me, and the relief at seeing them flowed through me. And then I saw an inked word appear on one of those faces. As I looked, a sentence appeared. My eyes drank in the phrase. The words raced across the man's face and onto the face of the man next to him. I knew the men could not see the words, but I screamed and scrambled away, my hands scrambling to cover my eyes. One of the men grabbed my hands and pulled them from my face. My eyes reflexively snapped open, and I saw the words, and I saw the city, and I saw the final corner before I reached the beast at the center. I saw a chitinous limb reaching out. I felt the lattice of the city closing around me. I ripped my hands free and forced my eyes shut. I spun my body to face downwards onto the floor, knocking into my travel bag, and a rabid plan appeared in my fevered mind. Grasping my bag, I staggered upright, and keeping my eyes shut, I slid along the wall of the room. Seized by the strength of desperation, I knocked two men out of my way as I scrabbled towards where I remembered the bathroom had been. I found the door and slammed it shut, locking it behind me. I opened my eyes. A single bulb lit the room. I reached into my travel bag and found what I knew was there. An unused sewing kit I had carried in there for years. I broke off the thread with my teeth and doubled it to give it strength. Fighting my shaking hands, I finally got it through the needle. I dared to look in the dirty mirror to see the first stitch went in the right place, and saw the inked words begin to appear on my own face. The beast was there. A cadaverous smell filled my nostrils. 5 tongues reached out to taste my soul, and teeth seemed to grow from the walls themselves. With my fingers, I forced my eyelids shut and began to sew. The searing pain felt distant compared to the fear that gripped me. My fingers were wet with blood when I slumped to the floor with my eyelids sewn tightly shut. My senses returned, and I could hear the men banging on the door, smell the disinfectant of the toilet, and feel the cold concrete that I had fallen upon. Somehow, the book was there with me. I felt the sigil on the cover, burning my fingers with its hot anger at my evasion. I tore at the pages, ripping it apart time and again, but every page seemed to return. I was soon surrounded by torn and crumpled pages, and yet I could also feel that the book itself was still completely intact. The sigil seemed to laugh, as if that beast could feel humor, and I knew that the book's words could wait my whole brief life for me to read the final sentence of its story. We are readers. When we see words, we cannot help but read them, and there are minds that know this about us. Words gave us the knowledge and power to keep the darkness at bay, but the things in the darkness are learning too. Their stories call to us, waiting to devour us all.